Mollie, the college football season is behind us. I'm sorry, no win at the end for Northwestern or Georgia Tech, but Ohio State took home the national title. We have the numbers, 22.1 million viewers. Did you think that the audience would be higher for that game?
I absolutely did. I didn't think it was going to be the highest performing college football playoff of all time, just given the inauguration on Monday, a national holiday, people probably traveling, everything. I did not think it was going to
Mhm.
be that low.
I thought it would be higher. I thought it would be 26 million or so. Even with the inauguration, even with the holiday, given the fan base of Ohio State, how that Ohio State Friday night semifinal performed, and just the national audience that Notre Dame brings, the fact that Notre Dame hasn't been in a national title game since that championship in January of 2013, I thought this would get maybe even north of last year's, which was 25 million. To see 22.1 million, just to put it into context, that's the third lowest title game in the CFP era and the fifth lowest since the BCS era began in January of 1999, that championship game. Lower than I thought, and it raises questions, all the questions that everybody in the college space and media space has been asking, is this the right time of year? Is this the right day of the week? Is this the right everything, the format, the setup to where the national championship game needs to be?
You bring up the brand, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and also the storylines. Both teams had really compelling storylines. Did Michigan just hate them too much and all the Michigan fans stopped watching? But I do think you raise an interesting point around the timeline. This is the end of January. College football has been happening since the beginning of August. Is there fatigue expanding from 4 to 12? And that's a conversation that's been happening throughout the sports media landscape, right? Is going from 4 to 12 too much? Should it have gone from 4 to 8? Should it have been more rolled out and tested a little bit? We won't know because obviously they went from 4 to 12. Is there too much fatigue?
And Molly, I think this is just another data point that the CFP organization, meaning the FBS commissioners and Notre Dame AD Pete Bavacqua, that they're going to look at in this new 12 team format. And if there's going to be even more expansion, you talk about 8 and we're at 12 now, like there's already talk about 14 or 16. What could that look like? How does it impact the audience? Is there fatigue? Do they need to take advantage more of week 0 to start the season a little earlier? All of these things are going to be looked at. And another thing, looking down the road into the future, into that next ESPN deal, you're going to see an ABC simulcast for this CFP game, and that is going to help boost the number a little bit. These since the CFP era began, it's only been like that ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU megacast. We haven't seen ABC be involved in this since Alabama, Texas back in 2010. So bringing a broadcast element back will help juice up the audience number a little bit. Well, Molly, we're moving on from CFP to the NFL. We have the numbers from divisional weekend, a little over 37 million viewers on average for those 4 games. That's the lowest mark for the second round of the NFL playoffs since 2021. What do you make of the decline so far this year for first the wild card round and now these divisional games?
I'm optimistic heading forward into Chiefs Bills. That'll draw a huge number coming up. But also, 37 million is still a huge number.
It's still a huge number. We're always talking about the NFL only against the NFL because there is no really any other comparison.
Ravens Bills on CBS was the highest. That was the matchup I was most looking forward to. That was about 42.2 million, but that's still down from that 50.4 that Chiefs Bills drew last year. But like I said, I'm looking forward to Chiefs Bills coming up next weekend.
And that Chiefs Bill game was a record. So much of the comparisons, especially season over season this year for the NFL, we're talking about record numbers last year. 50 million viewers for a divisional game. Like, yeah, the fact that you were still able to draw, between 42 and 43 million viewers, you were going to be down from that, but still, really strong compared to other games in that late Sunday window for that Ravens Bills game.
What surprised you about the numbers?
I was surprised that Commanders Lions on Fox on Saturday night was under 35 million viewers. I know the Commanders really got out to a big lead. There's a little bit of discoverability going on with Jaden Daniels as a real star in this league. And I can't believe I have to say that about somebody who was the number 2 overall pick, was the Heisman winner. But the Commanders are really coming back into the conscience again of broader NFL fans. They haven't been in the NFC title game since the early 90s. We're talking about 30 years here, but they have a star on their hands in Jaden Daniels. They knocked off the number 1 seed in the Lions. If he can beat the Eagles and even take them to Super Bowl, we're talking about somebody that is going to get the Commanders on a lot of prime time NFL games next season. Everyone's going to want a piece of Jaden Daniels. But like you said, Molly, coming into this championship weekend, that Bills Chiefs game. It's going to set a record for an AFC championship game, topping the record that was set last year by that Ravens Chiefs AFC title game.
Listen, I just hope that Taylor Swift and Caitlin Clark are sitting together again at the Chiefs game. That was fun. That was my
Yeah.
two favorite
Oh,
things.
you're leaving out Haley Steinfeld here. There's going to be cameras going to these suites left and right for this game, just looking at the celebrities.
Austin, I'm amazed you know who Haley Steinfeld is.
I got to read my people.com. I got to keep up with what's going on there.
You know I used to intern there, right?
I did not know that. Getting new info on Mollie on the
I was
podcast.
an intern at People Magazine.
All right, Mollie, sticking with the NFL a little bit, it was those two Christmas Day games that really helped Netflix with a strong fourth quarter, added a record 19 million subscribers. Obviously, not all NFL there. You had that Mike Tyson, Jake Paul fight. You also had Squid Game and some other entertainment properties really helping Netflix in its Q4. But what did you make about the impact that sports had on Netflix in their most recent quarterlies?
Sports was obviously huge. What was really interesting to me is during their earnings call Tuesday night, they actually tried to downplay the impact of sports. They wanted to emphasize their entertainment properties. What really stuck out to me is the lack of churn. So you have a lot of times people sign up for a streaming property to watch a specific game and then they cancel it. Ted Sarandos, Netflix's CEO, said on their earnings call Tuesday night that people stuck around and they have that internal data. That people are watching the NFL and Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, but they were also watching Squid Game and Carry On. But it's a huge driving force. They're also really excited about their upcoming rights agreement with FIFA for the Women's World Cup for 2027 and 2031. And they feel like that is going to be a really driving property for them. But also, Austin, you and I have talked a lot about where UFC is going to land.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to split up into a streaming property with ESPN keeping the majority package. I have felt that it will lean towards Netflix, especially with their early success with WWE Raw. The executives did say on their call Tuesday night that they're not very interested in full season packages right now with sports leagues.
Netflix says a lot of things. This time last year, they were like, we didn't even like sports. So I'm not sure I can even take Netflix executives at their word on these calls anymore.
I can tell you 2 years ago, after 10 years of Netflix saying we don't do ads, their pre-recorded earnings call, you have the co-CEOs say, oh, we're going to do ads and we don't know how to do that fancy ad matching stuff. We'll have other people do it. And I'm like,
they sandbag on these calls, and so I'm not really taking them at their word. They definitely danced around the UFC question on that earnings call.
oh, they dodged it so hard.
They dodged it. They're getting very good at that. But
Yeah, they said
like
we
you
can't
said,
comment, and then they instantly went into WWE.
well, that's one of the reasons that part, not all, of the UFC package does end with Netflix. They want to stay with Disney. They like what ESPN has brought to the table. They love the appeal of the global property that Netflix has become. You see what TKO Group has done with that WWE property, Raw, going to Netflix. We're not really going to have any sort of numbers like those traditional Nielsen numbers that we may have had. The first sort of look we'll have is when Netflix does their semi-annual data dump of how everything is doing on their service. So we'll be able to compare Raw against other properties that are within Netflix. But comparing the numbers really outside of the Netflix universe still remains an apples to oranges comparison.
And that data dump that Netflix is going to do that you mentioned is new.
You say new, they've only done it like 3 or 4 times. And this isn't about giving subscriber numbers. This is saying, okay, Squid Game had this many views, and we can compare that to maybe how Drive to Survive does. So we'll see how sports properties compare to one another and also against some of the larger or more obscure even entertainment shows that are on Netflix because their library is just so diverse.
Yes, but this is what Netflix is doing instead of announcing subscriber targets each quarter. They're going to announce quote key milestones. So who knows what that means, but we're no longer going to be able to compare subscriber gains and losses per quarter and per area each quarter.
No, I'm interested to see how Raw does because that is a weekly property that they did invest in. So them saying they're not really interested in something like a UFC, that is a regular sports program like that, I'm not buying it right now. Netflix is kicking the tires on that internally.
Take it with a full grain of salt because it's going to come down to Amazon or Netflix for that second package.
To do. Just so people have some perspective of here, just where the market cap is for Netflix these days. They're now 2x the size of Disney. It is just a massively huge entertainment and media company. If they want to spend the money on UFC, they have the money to spend on UFC and other packages.
They crossed 10 billion in revenue for the first time. They've got the cash.
They do. Another property, Mollie, that we've talked a lot about. We had David Levy, an investor and media advisor, on the pod last week talking about it. You and I have gone back and forth. we have the debut of Unrivaled. That happened on Friday night on TNT and True TV. Some of the early numbers, a little over 300,000 viewers for that doubleheader debut, around 312 to be exact. That is bigger than some of the even men's college basketball that it aired up against on Fox Sports 1 on the same night. What do you think about those initial numbers for Unrivaled and how the production looked on TV?
The production was fantastic. Listen, I come from the good old WNBA days where you're watching on a live stream on Twitter, seeing the investment that has clearly been made into this property that TNT Sports is doing. They're clearly treating this with care. I had a lot of connections down in Miami who cannot stop raving about the in-game experience, which makes me want to head down there as a fan. So if you see me there, I'm not working. I am having fun and come say hi, but leave me alone.
There are not a lot of fans there, period. It's not designed to be this huge arena. It's 850 some odd ticketed fans. That's a high school gym. Like that's there are high school gyms that are bigger than that for basketball. It is a made for TV product, and I will admit it looked good. I didn't catch Friday nights, but I caught Monday night during halftime of the CFP National Championship. Flipped over to TNT to catch it. It's a very interesting product. I mean, watching a semi full court 3-on-3, it's like watching fast break a little bit. When there was a half court offense, it's like, all right, here's a pick and roll almost every single time. But seeing them in breaks, doing that fast break sort of offense was interesting. I want to see more of it. I want to see how the numbers perform. I know on Saturday those games were on True TV. They're not going to be as high as the TNT numbers. That's obviously it's probably half or less than half of that audience. But I want to see how the rest of the numbers come in. The important thing to keep watching is, yes, there are big names in this league, big WNBA players. But year two, can you attract Caitlin Clark? Because that doubles or even triples maybe the audience that you're able to achieve there on TNT.
Fair enough, but Austin, you and I have talked about this too. Not on the pod. We've just talked about this. I like that Caitlin Clark is not in the league the first year, because if Caitlin Clark was in the league, or an Asia Wilson, the two biggest stars in the WNBA, it becomes Caitlin Clark and Unrivaled.
Mollie, I think you're right. It allows the property to grow organically a little bit without having one singular name to focus on. Next year, if you get her, it's not just Caitlin coming aboard too. You got Paige Beckers. Can you get Asia Wilson? Those can help the numbers really grow. But if you aren't going to get Caitlin Clark as part of this, you really need to talk about, like, does TNT see this out throughout the entirety of a 6-year deal? Pretty sure there's an opt-out in there after probably around halfway through.
It's a 3-year deal with a 3-year opt-in.
Yeah, so if you don't have Caitlin as part of this, then you start to think about whether TNT sticks around for the duration of that.
I think you're being a little harsh on it, Austin.
Absolutely. I'm just being realistic. Numbers are numbers.
Numbers are numbers, but what did the NBA draw its first season? I'm not comparing Unrivaled to the NBA, but this is the first weekend of a first year.
Oh, I'm not writing it off by any stretch, but I'm looking at the numbers. I'm looking, and like I said, it performed well against men's college basketball in the same time frame, but it's not going to draw what ESPN is getting in that same time frame. It's not going to do anything close to what broadcast TV is getting. It's better than some NWSL regular season games. It has a place right now. Can the numbers grow? What can those numbers grow to?
I'm going to quote your own numbers back at you, Austin. So I love NWSL, but out of the entire NWSL season, only 9 games drew higher than what Unrivaled averaged, and those were all on broadcast TV.
Absolutely.
TNT, True TV, Max, they don't have the reach of a broadcast TV. Warner Bros. Discovery has to be smart about it. I think they have to make sure they keep them in good windows. I think they have to promote the hell out of it. If we're doing buy, sell, hold, I am buy on Unrivaled.
I'm hold right now. Another key factor for me is, what was TNT airing in that same time slot last year? They showed a rerun of an old Terminator movie, and they got a higher audience. They got 343,000 viewers for that. So if they're paying a rights fee versus just airing a rerun of an old Terminator movie, which is going to get the better audience? But they are invested in women's sports. I love what they're doing. Mollie, I couldn't agree more that it looked really cool. The venue looks great. The production is awesome. It's very vibrant. I'm not writing it off by any stretch, but I'm a hold right now.
I think it's going to grow. And then you also have that documentary series they're doing. They don't have an exact launch date yet, but it's going to come Saturday nights after Unrivaled. Unrivaled Unscripted, which is a live look-in at what is happening in the 9 weeks they're down in Miami. I feel good about it.
Well, Mollie, speaking of Warner Brothers Discovery, as well as some other media properties that we've talked about, Netflix, Disney, and the like, we have a great conversation with one of the leading Wall Street media analysts out there, Jessica Reif Ehrlich of Bank of America.